Good Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock. Time for Sports4CLE. Hope you had a great weekend. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little later in the show. Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily will join us. We will also talk with Daniel Wallach from Wallach Legal about the Deshaun Watson case. And we begin by talking about the Deshaun Watson case. Some more developing stories with that as Josina Anderson tweets out today. The briefs are due at some point this week. They will be in the hands of Sue L. Robinson soon. A league source said the timeline for the result, looking for a few weeks because they want Sue L. Robinson to, quote, take her time, so it may not get done before training camp. There are only 4 women currently at issue in the Deshaun Watson proceeding. NFL concluded not to pursue 8 of the 12 women interviewed. So that 5th woman the league tried to pursue never interviewed her. So the league's scope is currently limited to 4 per the source that talked to Josina Anderson. And the league source on the threshold of proof expected to be applied by Sue L. Robinson in the Deshaun Watson case. NFL has the burden of proof, and it is by the preponderance of evidence that there is no dispute about that. Precedent is set in case law. Preponderance of evidence meaning more evidence for than against, as opposed to beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what the criminal threshold is. All right, Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk explains the process that Judge Sue L. Robinson is going through to issue her findings. And again, remember, it doesn't have to be evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. It has to be a preponderance of evidence showing that he violated that personal conduct code.
That's different from the NFL standard. The NFL standard is, did he violate the personal conduct policy? And the way that assault is used in the personal conduct policy, it suggests a higher level of misconduct. Now, that's where this is going to be challenging. What will Judge Robinson find as it relates to the actual facts of the case? And she's the one who's in a position to determine who's credible and who isn't. We don't know who all testified before her, but I'm assuming at some point Deshaun Watson told his story. Does she believe he's telling the truth? Does she see holes in his story? Does she see holes in the claims that were being made against him? But at some point, she has to find what happened. That's what's going to be so critical in her written opinion that hopefully we'll see, and I assume we'll see it because it doesn't involve an owner. We always see it when it involves a player.
And again, Mike Florio talking about the process. So the briefs will be in Sue L. Robinson's hands within the next couple of days. They expect her to take her time in issuing her findings. It's important to remember that the allegations against Watson now are for basically indecent exposure, improper touching. They're being termed assault by the claimants, and relative to the code of conduct that the NFL is also investigating and applying to the standard of Deshaun Watson. Mike Florio again talked about that.
And I don't want to be too graphic with this, but we've all seen the allegations. You know, he made his penis touch someone's hand, right? There was never any allegation of like grabbing someone and forcing them to do something, holding them down and assaulting them that way. It's a more subtle assault. Does that rise to the level of a violation of the personal conduct policy? That's all to be determined. So I guess what Busby's saying is, hey, we never said that there was the kind of violent exchange, that it's more about the circumstances. It was more of a subtle effort by a guy who was getting a massage, and there's a certain amount of consent that is involved by the person providing the massage. You're going to have certain touching that happens. There's going to be some inadvertent touching. It's an intimate act in and of itself. The argument is, at some point, Deshaun Watson crossed the line. And that, depending upon the evidence that was introduced on behalf of the 5 claimants, the 5 the NFL selected, is there a habit that Deshaun Watson was engaging in where he was setting up these private massages and trying, in every case, trying to make them into a sexual encounter? That's why his credibility is so important, and what he said at this hearing is so important.
Let's welcome in Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. So, Mac, it went down to 4 that is the league is now looking at as far as claimants against Deshaun Watson. There is no black and white here. There's all shades of gray in terms of what Sue L. Robinson is looking at.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we have to keep in mind here, Dave, is that, again, you have all these different levels to each of these stories. And it really comes down to, like what Florio was saying, is there a line of conduct that you can see? Is there a pattern that is established there when it comes to Deshaun Watson? And I think that's the most fascinating part of this, is that, again, there was, the reports from, Pro Football Talk previously about the lack of force in the past as well. But, again, looking at how all of these kind of play together, how do all of these line up? And seeing how Sue Robinson will rule on this, because, again, like what Josina Anderson put in the report, they're kind of urging and hoping that, Sue Robinson will take her time regarding all of these. And when it comes down to Sue Robinson's ruling, I do think that she'll take her time. I do think that she will have, with this being the first high-profile case that Judge Robinson has ruled on, I do think that she's going to take her time and really make sure that in her report, when that does come out, that does end up, being as detailed as possible to, again, show that this is a situation where there wasn't necessarily the influence from the NFL or one way or another. This was Judge Sue Robinson's case. This was her ruling, and this was her findings at the end of the day.
The other thing is it's going to be in the form of a written statement. So she's going to issue a written judgment, if you will, or arbitration as it is. It has to be able to be understood by guys like me and you and everybody that's going to talk about it, so that it can be explained to the NFL's fan base as well.
Yeah, it's almost like the Office line of "explain to me like I'm 5," because, again, when we have to explain this out there, I have to give it out in as best of layman's terms as possible. Dave, you know it as much as I know it. I'm no lawyer whatsoever. I'm sure that's why you're having Wallach on a little bit later on as well to better explain it than I can. But at the same time, again, you got to have it in as basic of terms as possible, while also, fully explaining why she came to this ruling. And so, for us to be able to kind of explain that out, at that point, I do think that, she is going to have to be as comprehensive while also being as, I don't want to say general, but, almost giving it as general terms as she possibly can, while being as detailed as she possibly can throughout all of these proceedings. Because, again, like you said, there's a lot of gray area here. So, at the end of the day, there's a lot that can kind of get lost in translation. So for her, I think that she is going to take her time. She is going to make sure that, when she does put out that statement of, what her findings are and what the ruling is, I do think that she's going to take her time with that and make sure that, this can be put out there for the masses and put out there for the NFL, the NFLPA, and Watson's representatives as well, all to be commonly understood.
Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Also, some quarterback rankings out from ESPN. Polled league executives, players, front office types. We'll take a look at that. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. You can catch him tonight 7 to midnight on 92.3 The Fan talking sports. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This viewer has an idea of where the Browns got their idea for building this roster.
Hi, I love the show. Was just wanting to add my 2 cents. I think that the Browns kind of copied and pasted what the Rams did. Sounds like things are coming out about Baker and Stefanski and issues there with communication. And yes, Baker Mayfield helped us to get to a playoff and win a playoff game. But same thing with the Rams. Jared Goff got them there, but they just didn't feel like he was going to get them the ultimate prize. And I think that, it's okay. It's a copycat league. If something works, you can copy it. It's okay. And I think the Browns did that. I think they saw what the Rams did, got rid of a pretty good quarterback, but they wanted an upgrade. And I think that's as plain and simple as it is. Everybody was on board with it. They were able to get their guy. And I just think that that's it in a nutshell. We're hoping now that Deshaun will get us over that hump of not just making the playoffs, not just getting a playoff win, but going for that Super Bowl. Thank you very much.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mac, I'll take it even a step further. If you don't have a franchise or elite quarterback, you're always trying to find one. I think the difference is Deshaun Watson is significantly younger than Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was going to make there, Dave. I'm glad we're on the same page because, when it comes to the Rams, it's really not that big of a formula or that rocket science type of math that we're kind of going down the road here. It's, do you have a franchise quarterback? Do you think that quarterback can get you to the Super Bowl? Do you think that quarterback can win you the Super Bowl? If you're not even answering that second question there, then what are we doing? So at that point, Andrew Berry, who, again, at multiple times has told you that he's always looking for upgrades along the roster. He's somebody who I'm sure was already, having that question in the back of his mind when he didn't give Baker Mayfield that extension last offseason. So at that point, when they're evaluating him, and again, as the season kind of dwindled and was kind of going down as the season went on, you saw the opportunity that, Andrew Berry looked at and said, you know what? I think we need an upgrade. I think that we can be okay with Baker, but I think that we can go ahead and we can take it to that next level. I don't think that we can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. So at that point, I do think that, he looked at Deshaun Watson, and while yes, the Rams looked at Matthew Stafford, said, let's go get Stafford. It's a completely different ball game that we're really talking about when we're talking Matthew Stafford versus Deshaun Watson. Matthew Stafford, like you mentioned, he's in the back half of his career. He's further on in his career than Deshaun Watson, drafted in 2009 versus 2017. Deshaun Watson's just now coming into his prime. So, yes, Matthew Stafford, obviously, it was a great move last offseason, and, the rest of that roster seemed like it was there. So, yes, they're going to go after that quarterback. But for the Browns, yes, their roster is there. Just the right opportunity came along more so than anything. And I think that Andrew Berry, once he kind of looked at everything, and again, once he was comfortable enough to go ahead and go after a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, even with the off-the-field issues, he went after it, and again, locks down that quarterback for the long term through his prime. And now at this point, I think you're looking at the Browns being set up in a pretty good position, going down, and especially in the future, not just this year and in years to come, when it comes to adding a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. So, and the similarity, I will say, between Matthew Stafford, I watched a video earlier today, 2019, all of the comeback drives that Deshaun Watson led with that, Houston Texans offense, even with DeAndre Hopkins, and then his lead back being Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde. Sound familiar at that point? So, seeing how he's been able to lead that team and how he fits into this Cleveland Browns offense and into the Cleveland Browns future plans, I think it was a no-brainer. So I think that there's a lot of similarities, but do I think that Andrew Berry looked at the Rams winning the Super Bowl and said, you know what, I think we need to go ahead and upgrade that quarterback position because they did. I don't think that was the case necessarily for Andrew Berry, but I think that there are a lot of similarities in looking at both stories.
Yeah, here's what I would say. If you have a quarterback that you feel pretty good about, giving him the football on your own 30, 2 minutes left in the game, you're down 5, and you got 2 timeouts. You didn't feel good with Baker Mayfield doing that. You feel okay with Deshaun Watson in those situations. This is kind of interesting. Executive coaches and players ranking the top 10 quarterbacks. This is from an ESPN ongoing poll. And you see Rodgers is number 1. Take a look at the ages there, too. Mahomes, 2. Josh Allen, 3. Brady, Burrow. Matthew Stafford, 34 years old, is 6. Russell Wilson ranked at number 8. Deshaun Watson comes in at number 9, and he's 26 years old. People tend to forget he's the same age as Patrick Mahomes and has 1 less year of wear and tear because he didn't play last year. But Watson, that highly thought of. NFC Scout, there's no question about the ability, and I'm assuming he stayed in shape. I have little concern that he can come back and be an elite player. I just don't know when he's going to play again. And a front office, NFL front office official, all I know is when he had the best NFL season, his best NFL season, 2020, his team went 4-12. A good quarterback, but he still has a lot to show on the field. And Mac, I would say he's going to have the best offensive line that he's had and the best running game that he's had by far.
Yeah, and you think about it too, like that was the year that they were just starting to remake that offensive line. Again, you lost DeAndre Hopkins in that best season. So, to say that, just because he only won 4 or 5 games, I can't remember off the top of my head in 2020, just to say that because he didn't have that win total, yeah, you know what, he's not that good of a quarterback. I'm sorry, I disagree. I look at, some of these other quarterbacks in that ranking. I know everybody loves Joe Burrow, and I love the personality of the guy, but to put him top 5, I think is a little premature. And the other quarterback that's in the mix there is, Dak Prescott. Again, somebody with Dallas who, he's constantly in the mix. And I like Prescott, but to put him up there at top 10 over guys like Lamar Jackson and hell, even Derek Carr, I think is a little premature. And I do think that, Stafford, I think he can get bumped up a little bit. But I think with Watson, I think the more fair argument is the first scout that you had read off there where, he had mentioned the fact that, Watson hasn't played in a year. We haven't seen Deshaun Watson since 2020. And at that point, I can't disagree with that. I think that there might be some rust when it comes to him coming back. But, at the end of the day, I think that, he's still 26 years old. He's still damn talented. And for all of those comebacks that he led his team to the postseason in 2019, I don't think that all of a sudden you just fall off because you didn't play a year. I think that that's something where, yes, there's going to be some rust, but I think that, Watson being at 9, I think is a little bit fair, maybe bump him up a little bit. But, at the end of the day, I do think that, the long term and wondering where he's going to be at, how much he's going to play, I think that's the serious question that people are more so posing when it comes to that.
Okay, so Lamar Jackson was not on that list. In case you're wondering, Lamar Jackson was 11th as the top quarterbacks in the NFL. He still has not gotten the extension, and he is looking for big money. This is his Twitter account, and it's a gold grill on his teeth, and the message is, I need money. So I'm guessing, it's a little different than a billboard, but you do what you do to try to make your point, and social media is a place for making points.
Yeah, and, to take a line from Aloe Black, I need $1. $1 is what I need. And so, looking at Lamar Jackson, trying to get that extension done, and it's an interesting position because I've been following along with this because, Lamar Jackson still represents himself. That was one storyline that was really kind of coming out throughout the NFL draft process in 2018. And I think that's part of the reason why he fell down to 32. But at the same time, because he's all the way down at 32, he didn't get paid as handsomely as those other quarterbacks in the upper echelon because of his draft slot. So, didn't make nearly as much as Baker Mayfield. How didn't make as much as Josh Rosen, at the beginning of his career. So, I think that Lamar has a point when it comes to that. But at the end of the day as well, when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, who makes as much money as he did, and Lamar has a MVP on his resume, he has that already in the NFL. I think that Lamar Jackson has a point where, hey, you know what? If you want me to stick around long term, go ahead and pay me, because I know that other franchises that will go ahead and pay me that money. Because, think about how much, the Rams were willing to give up for an aging Matthew Stafford, along with giving up Jared Goff. Imagine thinking about what, the Miami Dolphins might be willing to give up in free agency just to bring you in. If Stephen Ross was willing to pay you for losses to try to tank for, allegedly, if he's willing to pay $100,000 per loss, allegedly, how much is he willing to give up for the guy who's just on the open market?
Yeah. Mac Robinson and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to Myles Garrett, former #1 overall pick, something that's very interesting about Myles. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Mac Robinson. You can catch Mac tonight, 7 until midnight, 92.3 The Fan. This is interesting. This is from the NFL on CBS. So of players drafted in 2018 or earlier, Myles Garrett is the only #1 overall pick that is still with his team. You see Stafford, Bradford, Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, Eric Fisher, Jadeveon Clowney now with the Browns, Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, and Baker Mayfield all have moved on. And Mac, it just kind of goes to show you, #1 overall doesn't always mean it's going to work out.
Yeah, and it's not always guaranteed in that sense. When it comes down to it, Myles Garrett has really, lived up to those expectations, and then some, at least, as the #1 overall pick. Again, being one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. And it's funny, too, the fact that, again, Jadeveon Clowney is on that list. He's already traveled around the NFL to a few teams and now is in Cleveland opposite of Myles. But, it's interesting, especially because not only has Myles been able to impact on the field, but also his impact off the field as well in the community. And, hell, even taking some preseason or some summer league layups with the Cavs summer league team. I think that it's always been fun kind of keeping an eye out with Myles Garrett and what he's been able to do. But the fact that not only he's been able to, stick around, but, really thrive and live up to those #1 pick expectations that I think that we've seen that have really kind of gone by the wayside over the last few years, especially.
Yeah, you mentioned the Cavs Summer League team and Myles Garrett. These are not layups. This would be a guy that looks like he can play the game a little bit. Myles Garrett in uniform. Cavs gave him a home and a road jersey, both colors. And you see also now in stocking feet kind of in the gym. Mac, I'm watching this, and I'm convinced this guy, I don't think he'd be a superstar, but I think he might be able to get you, 8 points, 8 rebounds in one of those summer league games. The guy looks
for
like,
sure. And you know what? It might be a hot take to some, but I can call Myles Garrett probably the Draymond Green of summer league, where he's probably going to be big enough to beat you down low and bully you in the paint, but at the same time be able to make some outside shots and pass the ball around on the outside. I think that Myles Garrett especially really showed out, especially with that vertical leaping ability, the athleticism, and we've always known that he's athletic. I'm sure that Kevin Stefanski probably has a heart attack watching those highlights especially, but at the end of the day, I think that Myles Garrett really showed out, and out of anything, I wouldn't mind seeing him playing a game or two. It'd be much better than the showing of Tony Romo playing for the Mavericks in the last couple of regular season games when he retired. But sure, I'll go ahead and see Myles Garrett play.
The one thing is, got to put shoes on. Don't want to see him doing that. And he was in stocking feet. Don't want to see any slips or any of that. All right, since 2019, there are only 8 wide receivers with 300-plus routes in single-man coverage who has won their routes at least 50% of the time. Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Deontay Johnson, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and Amari Cooper. So Amari Cooper ahead of Odell Beckham Jr. And again, Cooper does it as a precise route runner. Nothing is, leaps off. I mean, he's a good athlete, but nothing is, he doesn't run a 4.2 or anything like that. He is where he's supposed to be and just has a knack for getting open.
Yeah, he's a technician when it comes to being a route runner, and that's the biggest thing with him that sticks out is that, he's one of the best route runners in the NFL when it comes to, again, being very precise. And, even in talking to, some people in Dallas as well, sometimes they said that he was almost too good because of the turf. That added to the plantar fasciitis that he had dealt with down there in Dallas because of the turf. There would be some times where, he'll try to cut on a dime and it's almost too much and too quick when it comes to him. So, he's somebody who, like you said, he's not going to overwhelm you with his speed, but he has plenty of speed to take advantage of. And at the end of the day, I think that he's somebody who really can take advantage. And especially, with somebody that's a big play receiver on the other side, like a Donovan Peoples-Jones that can win down the field. I think that, Cooper is somebody who is going to be exactly where you need him to be. And again, in seeing, how Deshaun Watson has, executed a lot of those game-winning drives over the last few years, he's somebody who, when it comes to finding those precise routes, I think that he's going to absolutely love having, Amari Cooper. I know that they're not the same type of receiver, but again, with what he was able to do with DeAndre Hopkins, I think that he's able to find and utilize those receivers in their strengths. And so for getting Amari Cooper open, knowing where he's going to be and be able to hit him in stride, I think that's really going to be a massive advantage for Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper.
Mac Robinson, appreciate you hopping on. I know you have an air shift. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mac.
Of course, Dave. Always love hopping on with you guys.
All right, Mac Robinson. Listen to him 7 to midnight tonight, 92.3 The Fan. Give him a call, talk sports. We appreciate Mac Robinson. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Daniel Wallach, legal analyst, co-host of the Conduct Detrimental, a podcast scheduled to join us, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield from a well-known viewer.
Hey, Dave, this is Mr. Sooner Mayfield. You haven't heard from me for a while, and I've just been kind of watching what's been going on, and I was real impressed with seeing Kurt Warner talk about how Baker Mayfield, when utilized properly, is more than just your average quarterback. Got a strong arm. If you cut the field in half, you get him on the rollouts and what have you. He's deadly accurate, and he throws a very long ball. Then I see all you people just butchering the hell out of him still. He's leaving. Leave him alone. Here's this deal about immature from the locker room. Who said it? If people don't come forth and say, hey, it was said by this guy or that guy, then it's a bunch of BS. And the last time when I called in and I said, all right, who in the Browns organization said it, you all just pushed it under the carpet. So do us a big favor. Leave him the hell alone. He's going to make a lot of you eat your words. And as far as I'm concerned, Kurt Warner has the right Baker Mayfield, okay? I've enjoyed talking with you guys, but I'll tell you the truth, it's time to let him go, and I'm going to go. Goodbye.
All right. As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails, and we appreciate Mr. Sooner Mayfield's defense of Baker. And said a number of times, I wish Baker Mayfield nothing but the best in his new home, Carolina. But again, if you have to cut the field in half for an NFL quarterback, it generally does not work out very well. But again, appreciate all the different opinions. All right, let's welcome in Daniel Walk, legal analyst, co-host of Conduct Detrimental. Daniel, I appreciate you hopping on. I know I called you a couple hours ago and asked you to talk about the whole Deshaun Watson thing. Take us through, fans have asked a number of times, you know, well, he wasn't convicted of any crime. How can the NFL suspend him? Take us through the steps and just the difference between the hearing that Sue L. Robinson wrapped up and is getting the briefs on and any type of criminal thing that would have been brought against Watson.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me on. I don't know how the connection is in this room, but if we're having a problem, you'll let me know. So the NFL has always made clear in its personal conduct policy that they're free to take on their own investigation, irrespective of whether a player has been charged with a criminal offense, irrespective of how things play out in either the criminal or civil justice system. The NFL will have its own investigative process and make their own determination as to whether the player committed violations of the personal conduct policy, which covers a wide range of activity, ordinarily centering on, crimes of violence, sexual assault, a wide range of misconduct, but domestic violence, sexual misconduct, that area is tending to, come up, in some of the more recent cases. And the burden of proof is going to be different in the NFL's investigative process. Now, they don't have the subpoena power to force witnesses to cooperate, but the level of proof is going to be much lower than it is in a criminal trial where all the jury has to find by proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused committed the crime. In a civil lawsuit, the standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence, meaning it's more likely than not that the offense occurred. Traditionally, under the NFL's personal conduct policy, they used an even lower standard called credible evidence, which is basically any evidence that could be credited by the NFL that would tend to support a finding that there was a violation, even if it's outweighed by other evidence. And today we're learning, and I wrote a lengthy piece from my website, Conduct Detrimental, and I said, hey, it's not fair if the NFL uses a credible evidence standard, because courts have found that to be unconstitutional in a trial proceeding, because it would allow the finder of fact to disregard other evidence and just basically cherry pick one or two strands of evidence, and the weight of the evidence could support the player. So several courts have found that to be a violation of the due process clause of the federal constitution. So today the NFL has, announced, or through reporting has conceded, that they're going to apply the same standard of proof that is used in civil lawsuits. Now, this won't play out in a court. Under the new collective bargaining agreement, there's a disciplinary officer, former retired federal court judge Sue Henderson, who was jointly selected by the Players Association, by the National Football League. Under the old CBA, the NFL meted out the discipline, and then all appeals were taken to Commissioner Roger Goodell. So what's new about this current system is that we have a neutral fact finder in the phase one level. Goodell still hears the appeal, but the NFL and the Players Association agreed on a jointly selected hearing officer that can make the initial determination as to whether the player committed the violation, and if so, what the punishment should be.
Yeah, and that is, as you mentioned, retired Judge Sue L. Robinson. Let me ask you this. You keep hearing the NFL is pushing for an indefinite suspension of at least a year, and then you kind of see, there's no force, there's no violence, there's no coercion, and the claimant's attorney, Tony Busby, came out and said, well, there was only 2 instances of the 24 or 26, and those have both been settled. Is the league kind of posturing, do you feel? Because right now it's, when they admitted it was indecent exposure, improper touching is what they're looking at as far as the conduct code goes.
That's a critical distinction between the threats of violence and use of force, because under the personal conduct policy, those types of offenses have a minimum baseline suspension of 6 games. Since we're not talking about crimes of violence or the use of coercion, Judge Robinson, I'm sorry, I said Judge Henderson. There used to be a Harold Henderson, who was the NFL arbitrator for Ezekiel Elliott. I'm confusing the two for a moment. So Judge Robinson has a wide range of sentencing discretion. It's not a sentence, but it's a punishment, but she's not bound by the 6-game minimum. And, between the higher burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence, the lack of a crime of violence, coercion, or threats, she could potentially find him to be in violation of the personal conduct policy, yet suspend him for only a couple of games, or maybe no games at all, and just impose a fine or some counseling. The difficulty with that is if the National Football League is unhappy with the outcome, they can take an appeal, and the appeal is going to be heard by one of their employees, Roger Goodell. And under the new CBA, the commissioner can't overturn the finding on the merits, but he can increase the severity of the punishment to take it from counseling or a 1-game suspension and make it an indefinite 1-year suspension, which is what the NFL wanted all along. So it really bears watching, and it's going to open up, I guess, a lot of intrigue as to if she does impose any level of suspension, even if it's minor, then the National Football League is going to have 3 days to file an appeal, and Roger Goodell could potentially override her factual determinations, maybe not specifically, but he can basically take those factual findings and decide that the punishment isn't enough and it should be more severe, and end up in the same exact place where we landed. So she might try to write a written opinion with conclusions of law, specific factual findings that could basically box Commissioner Goodell in a little bit and make her opinion appeal proof. I'm not sure how she can do that, because once there's any level of discipline imposed, it opens the door up for the league to take an appeal to their employee, Roger Goodell, and then Roger Goodell can increase the punishment from potentially a non-suspension to a suspension of indefinite duration. But I would think with the higher level of proof, the cherry picking of the witnesses here, we started with 25 civil lawsuits. 12 of these women came forward and cooperated with the National Football League. They're only willing to rely on the testimony of 4 of the witnesses. So we went from 25 down to 4, no threats of violence, no coercion, the preponderance of the evidence standard. And then crucially, these women aren't testifying in the hearing before Judge Sue Robinson. It's just basically the NFL's own investigative report that is not subject to any cross-examination. I mean, you can't cross-examine a piece of paper. And if I'm the league and I want to win by a preponderance of the evidence, I want these 4 women on the stand. I want them to tell their story. I want Judge Robinson to hear what they went through. It doesn't resonate quite the same way to read the words on a printed page or in a deposition transcript or in some in-house NFL investigator's summary of the witness interview. To me, that's not a preponderance of the evidence. Those are just words on paper that are not subject to cross-examination. And in the civil justice system and in the criminal justice system, you have a Sixth Amendment right to confront your accuser. And in this scenario, in this type of proceeding, Watson's lawyers, the great Jeffrey Kessler, who is representing the Players Association, there's nobody to cross-examine because paper can't talk. And I question whether documentary evidence without photographic evidence that's very incriminating, whether that's going to be enough to clear the preponderance of the evidence standard. So Watson could win this based upon the burden of proof being higher than what was originally thought. I mean, under a credible evidence standard, the league has a layup. I mean, there's really no hurdle to clear. But now that it's the preponderance standard, which means more probable than not, 51%, how do you prove that without these women coming into court and subjecting themselves to cross-examination from the defense attorneys? I mean, if I'm the judge, I'm not swayed by a piece of paper unless there's photographs that show injuries, and maybe there was some opportunity to, present 2 sides of the story. But I question, based on the burden of proof, whether there's going to be enough here to find Watson in violation of the personal conduct policy. And the fact that he settled so many cases, that's not really admissible to show guilt. People settle cases for all kinds of reasons, and it could be just to get rid of the nuisance value. It could be less expensive to settle them now than to pay your attorney's fees for the next 2 years. So the notion that he settled these lawsuits is not tantamount to an admission of guilt.
Before I let you go,
the judge should know that. I mean, she's been a judge for 25 years. That's black letter law. Settlements are not admissions of liability.
Before I let you go, do you have a sense at all of where you think this is going to lie based on what we know? And again, we don't have the affidavits and the testimony, but based on what you know, do you get a sense for what type of suspension or any suspension Deshaun Watson might be looking at?
I think Judge Robinson is going to be very smart about this. No suspension will lead to this public outcry because he's got 25, cases and he settled 21 of them. Where can she impose, what level of suspension will be enough for Robinson not to take an appeal and for the league to be satisfied with the outcome and for the public? I mean, she's representing the Players Association and the league. She doesn't have to be as concerned with public outcry, but I think she'd like to impose a punishment or a finding that really would leave both parties equally unhappy, but not willing to pursue an appeal. And I think that level would be about 8 games.
Daniel Wallach, as always, I appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. Hopefully we can connect again if anything else develops. But I really appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for all the questions. And we'll keep following the story. In a couple of weeks, we'll know the answer. All
right. Daniel Wallach, again, conductdetrimental.com. You can read what he has written. Really good stuff about the Deshaun Watson suspension hearing and what's going into it. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily joins us. Sports for CLE. He'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. So we've heard a lot about the Deshaun Watson suspension hearing. Judge Sue L. Robinson due to get the briefs within the next couple of days. So the question is, what's Deshaun Watson doing? We have the answer for you. Deshaun Watson is working out in Austin, Texas with a couple of his NFL buddies, as well some of the younger quarterbacks, Justin Fields, along with Malik Willis, also working out with a couple of NFL defensive players as well as wide receivers. But Deshaun Watson staying in shape, throwing the football, and hopefully getting back to playing just football. Let's welcome in Eddie McDonald, Dog Pound Daily. Eddie, it's nice to see Deshaun Watson throwing a football. We like that.
Yes, we very much like that. And, we don't know what the suspension is going to be, if there's going to be any. The briefings, I believe they're going to be turned in this week. Someone said, I believe, today. Both sides are going to be turning in their briefs, so it could take up to another 2 weeks. But in that time, no matter if he is suspended or if he's not, he still has to stay in shape. Training camp opens in about 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. So he's going to have to be, in shape, and especially because he didn't play last year. He sort of was suspended, but not really. It was like a involuntary suspension, if you will, between him and the Texans. So seeing him throw a football and working out is a great feeling for us Browns fans.
All right, so this is from NFL.com, predicting defensive and specialist all-rookie teams. And they have Perion Winfrey as a defensive tackle. His playing time should increase as he progresses through his rookie campaign. He'll accumulate somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 tackles for loss, 3 to 5 sacks for the season. And this one will make Browns fans smile. Cade York, the kicker, made 15 of 19 attempts from 50 or more during his LSU career. The sort of consistency from distance that the Browns need going up against guys like Evan McPherson of the Bengals, Justin Tucker of the Ravens, Chris Boswell of the Steelers. But if you give him Winfrey as a all-rookie defensive player and Cade York especially, should be a pretty good season for the Browns.
A good season for the Browns, another good draft for Andrew Berry. On paper, it looks fantastic, again, for the third straight year. But with Winfrey, we've talked about it on the show numerous times. We had him mocked at, their 44th pick. Should they have had that? They did not. To get him 60 picks later, 64 picks later, is amazing, especially if he can produce anything close to what, they are projecting him to right there. I would take 3 to 5 sacks. I would take 6 to 8 tackles for losses. That is fantastic for a rookie. And especially, I think he will see more time. I think he's going to be sort of like JOK, not in the what he brings to the table, but in the fact that they're going to ease him into it. last year JOK did not see the field as much as what a lot of people thought he should, and that was because they were easing him into it, didn't want to blow him up too much in his first season. I think they'll do the same thing with Winfrey. And as for Cade York, you mentioned McPherson, you mentioned Tucker. I think the Browns finally have their kicker. I wrote about that. If anything, if college is any indication of what he is capable of, I'm very excited for this and hope that this happens. I don't know if there was another kicker drafted. If there was, I don't remember who it was. It wasn't the 4th round, wasn't the Browns. So, but yeah, we can have him. I don't want fans to say that, oh, well, we have our Justin Tucker. I hope he's our Justin Tucker, but Justin Tucker has set the bar extremely high. He is one of the best, if not the best kicker ever, depending on who you ask. So if these two guys can make that team, that'd be fantastic and just prove that Andrew Berry and company know what they're doing.
Yeah, and again, 15 of 19 comes out to almost 79% on his field goals of 50 or more in his college career. Okay, this also from NFL.com. This one's kind of interesting. Top duos at 11 key positions, and the Browns have 2 of them. They have the top duos at running back, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Browns backfield, one of the most feared offensive units in all of football. Chubb and Hunt, 5-star playmakers with the individual and collective skills to take over a game at any point. And then edge rusher, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, both 5-star athletes. Impressive set of physical tools that challenge elite blockers in space. And, Eddie, I think people tend to forget that Kareem Hunt didn't play a lot last year, and I think that kind of sidetracked the offense as much as Baker Mayfield's injury did. Hunt is a threat in the red zone.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest points from last year, aside from Baker Mayfield and his inconsistent play and his shoulder injury. Kareem Hunt was not on the field for over half the season, 9 games. So to have him back this year, especially with Deshaun Watson, I think that this offense is going to just continue to roll. And him and Chubb are the perfect complementary pieces to each other, as we've talked about at this show a few times, where Kareem Hunt is more of like the explosive back that will like bang through you. Nick Chubb is the patient back who will wait and see what hole opens up and then burst through that hole. And then good luck catching him if he gets an open field. And if you do catch him, good luck, staying on your feet, because he has a deadly stiff arm that is fantastic to watch as a Browns fan. But they are like the perfect combination because they can do everything together that they can do separately. And if they are together doing things, then that's a scary sight for the league. As for Clowney and Garrett, I'm glad that they got recognition as the top duo. Depending on who you ask, Myles Garrett is the top guy or the second top guy behind TJ Watt. And to have a battering mate that, can put you in this position where, hey, you two are the 2 best opposite each other in the league, that's good news for the Browns. So if the Browns can use a lot of clock, especially in the games that Brissett might have to start, use a lot of clock with Chubb and Hunt, and then you go to the other side of the ball and maybe get the ball back with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, that's a win-win. And I'm glad that, the Browns finally have a top duo, 2 different top duos, in the league, even though they've had the top rushing duo, I think, for 2 years now, despite injuries.
Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. So which lesser-known player should a team be more trusting of than they currently are in 2022? Tom Pelissero, NFL Network on Good Morning Football, had this to say about one of the Browns.
I'm going to look to the Cleveland Browns here. Of course, made a big move for Amari Cooper in a offseason full of big moves at that wide receiver position. I want to talk about another receiver on that team, and it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. Go back to last season. He tripled his targets from his rookie year, went from 14 catches to 34. Also, among all players over the past 2 seasons, there's only one guy in the NFL who has averaged more yards per catch, and that is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, another guy who's going to be going to a new team this year in Kansas City, trying to help fill the void left by Tyreek Hill. Donovan Peoples-Jones ranks number 2 on that list. He is a big play threat. With Amari Cooper, you know that he's going to get more attention here. They're still figuring out kind of how the receiver group fits together in the post-Odell Beckham Jr. era. I would anticipate Donovan Peoples-Jones is a big part of that.
Eddie, again, Peoples-Jones had he was kind of thrust into almost the number 1 wide receiver, and I think he struggled with that. I think if you put him as a number 2, he probably settles in pretty nicely.
I absolutely agree with that. Last year he did have a lot of production. He was able to, almost double all of his stats from his rookie season, except for the receptions. He had 20 more of those. So that's good. I think with Amari Cooper there, he is going to see a lot more targets this year because Cooper, I assume, will garner some double teams. But I am absolutely over the moon with this. I hope that we don't overhype him. I don't want people to think that he's the next, whoever, or the next top 5 receiver, top 10 receiver in the league. But I absolutely think he could have a huge season, especially with Deshaun Watson and getting a little bit more comfortable in that offense.
And remember, a later round pick, so a guy that you hope develops as he goes, and he'll be going into that third year. All right, this is from one of your colleagues at Dog Pound Daily, 3 most overrated players on the Browns 2022 roster. Number 3, they say Harrison Bryant. Number 2, Ronnie Harrison. And number 1, they go with Donovan Peoples-Jones. And again, Eddie, you kind of alluded to it, wrapping up the previous thing that we were talking about. He had this monster training camp, and people were thinking, he's going to take off.
That's the one thing with Browns fans, myself included. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm on my high horse and that I never did this. But there are so many different guys around the league that are on the Browns roster that guys on Twitter or wherever, overhype them. And that's fine. That's fandom. That's, 1,000% what fandom is all about. But with that, you have to have realistic expectations. I don't agree that Donovan Peoples-Jones is overrated on this list. I don't think that he is a premier, superstar wide receiver in this league yet, but I don't think he's overrated. I don't think he's rated. I think he might be a little bit underrated just because of what he did last year with all the turmoil with quarterback, the injuries, and then the release of Odell Beckham Jr. and then Jarvis Landry. That comes. But I will agree with Ronnie Harrison. He came in a couple years ago in a trade. He was fantastic in the 2020 season. And then ever since last year when he, put his hands on that Chiefs coach in the first game of the year, things went downhill for him. And, he did battle back a little bit. So hopefully he has that 2020 season this year. And Harrison Bryant, I'm excited to see what he does now that he's going to have a little bit bigger role. We talked about before that David Njoku is going to be the number 1 guy there with Austin Hooper out. He's going to be up number 2. So he has a chance to really shine this year. I don't know if I'd call him overrated necessarily. That's sort of a little bit of a stretch. I get where he's coming from. But at the same time, this is a big year for him, and we'll see what the future holds for him. But as for Donovan Peoples-Jones, I don't think he's overrated at all. I don't know if he's properly rated at all, no matter what you say to him. He's not a top 5, not top 10. I don't think he's probably a top 25 receiver in the league right now. He might not be even top 30, and that's fine. We don't need him to have that going into the season because, as you said, the training camp last year, he might as well have been the best wide receiver in the league, according to Browns Twitter, because he did have an explosive camp, was making a ton of plays, but we have to have realistic expectations at the same time.
Yeah, and again, it's a guy that you got late in the draft that was in his 2nd year. So, again, let's see what he learned. Let's see how he puts it into practice on the field. Before I let you go, give me a couple of guys that you think could have breakouts this season, 2022.
I think Chase Winovich is a big guy that can have one, mainly because last year he was in the doghouse with Bill Belichick, somewhere you don't ever want to be if you're a football player, because then you'll see your time diminish. He absolutely saw his time almost disappear completely. I think he's in for a big year. I think he's going to be a little bit more motivated. I think that he is going to be one of those guys that, gets a lot of support from the fans, and I think he'll feed off of that, whether it be on social media or out and about in the city doing whatever. I think that'll translate on Sundays. At least I'm hoping that will be. And I really think, we just talked about him, David Njoku. I think he's going to have a huge season now that he's the number one guy. He just got paid. He's worked his butt off the past couple of years. He's invested in his blocking. He's improved his pass catching abilities. So I think those two, if we're going to pick one from offense and one from defense, Winovich and Njoku.
Yeah, I'm with you on Njoku. I think it could be a really big year for David Njoku, especially if Deshaun Watson plays half or more of the season. Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. Always appreciate the time. Good stuff, Eddie. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it, Dave.
All right, Eddie McDonald, make sure you read him, Dog Pound Daily. And that's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.